One thing is clear this offseason, Eric Bieniemy is going to bring changes to the Mahomes offense on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. Thanks for making us your first listen here on Locked On Chiefs, your daily show for the Kansas City Chiefs here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one network in America for sports on podcasts. We can't say thank you enough for getting us there. You everydayers are a large part of that, and we want to reward you. For you everydayers, you can get into the action. Join the Everydayer Club. You get ad-free audio. You get access to the Discord where we have conversations that we don't have on the show. You can interact with us. Go check that out. I have a lot going on, and we're going to wrap this up with, after all these changes that we've started to see, what does it mean today? And what are our interpretations? He's Chris Clark from KC Chiefs Corner. I'm Ryan Tracy from NFL33.com, as well as RGR Football and Rogue APC, where the Athletic Matrix gets made. We've been doing this together for over 9 seasons at this point. We're going to hit 10 come the middle of June this year, and we're looking forward to it. Thanks for making us part of your journey in Chiefs Kingdom. Make sure that you check out the rest of the shows, what you might have missed this week with Matt Derrick and all of our other stuff, as well as the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network. Also, want to make sure that you guys are aware we have new insights. We have Opinion Day. It's a Friday, right? So we're going to have some fun with it. What's EB's immediate impact? What happens as a result of him being in the building, other than Jason Kelce losing his mind? Then we're going to move on to what the opportunities are for more change related to Bieniemy's hire and without it. There's still a lot to be decided on this coaching staff and with this team. And then we got to get into the maybes. What could go wrong? That's coming up later in the show. And we start with just the fact that I expect players to come out. I expect them to be a little bit more tired at training camp. I expect them to be a little bit more direct in their comments, because as much as they say teams take after their head coach, I think players take after their position coaches and their coordinators. Travis Kelce's already been pretty outlandish, pretty straightforward. I expect more frank talk out of the players directly because EB is the guy that's running their world on the offensive side.
I would agree with that, and I think it's going to go a little bit of a step further. And let's not be surprised if there are players that seem a little peeved when you get to training camp and you start getting interviews from some of these players. He is going to push you. He is going to make things uncomfortable, and that's exactly what I guess I can't say that's exactly, but that's part of the reason he is back in Kansas City, is because they want that situation to happen. And quite frankly, there's no problem with that on my end. Like, you look at the accountability that this roster had, you look at how this team played at different times over the past couple of seasons since he's left, and you see a lack of leadership, and not necessarily a lack of leadership on the players' part, but just a lack of leadership overall in the offense, not really holding each other accountable. I do think that really came through in the way that things were done and the way they were prepped for games. I don't think Nagy really helped that situation at all, and I will see whether or not he gets a job elsewhere. I would imagine he's going to end up as an offensive coordinator at this point, considering where all the job states seem to be. But you look at this for the Chiefs, and it gives them an opportunity to have somebody come in and basically reset a mindset and be that guy. And I will never forget, I know we're talking about Eric Bieniemy, but I will never forget, you go back and you start looking at the conversation that Terrell Suggs had with Patrick Mahomes and had with the Chiefs organization when he came to Kansas City. And it was all about you have to have that mentality of being a dog. You have to be willing to get after it. This is what EB is going to be bringing on top of what they already have. This is what they need. They need to get back to, we're the biggest, baddest offense in the NFL, and you have to stop us. Not this stuff of we're going to win 11 games in a row by one score, because that's not sustainable. We saw that this season. You have to go take it to them. And the one thing that I'm really going to be curious about, and this is way in the future that we're not going to be able to tell until it actually happens in the season, is the thing I loved about Reid's offense this year compared to seasons past is he was way more aggressive in short yardage and on fourth down. Does he continue to do that in 2026? And does it change how they do it in 2026?
That's a good question. I hope that they are. I think they need to be. And how they are is definitely questioned. By a quick count, I don't have this scientifically. I just ran down the roster. I have 33 guys on this roster right now of the 53 that have not been coached by Eric Bieniemy. He's walking back into a young enough team that more than half of them have never been barked at by Eric Bieniemy. Is probably the best way to put it, right? So I think the whole thing gets turned up. And I think if it was a more veteran crew, if it was maybe less in the last couple of rookie classes, maybe that doesn't have the same effect. But him walking in, pushing players, and more specifically, pushing players that have status, like Patrick Mahomes, like Travis Kelce, I think that goes a long way to turning not just the Stars' performance around, but raising the elevation of what the expectation is for every single player on that offensive side.
Well, and I think there's a lot to be said about getting too comfortable. And I think that when you go to 3 Super Bowls in a row, there is a level of comfort in thinking that we've got this figured out, we can continue going on the same path. That's not the way the NFL works. That's not the way that competition works. You always have to be striving for more. You always have to be striving to be better. And we know Mahomes is always going to be that guy, but it can't just be Patrick. It has to be everybody going in the same direction doing that. And the big question when you start looking at this EB thing, you're right, 33 people haven't had him coached or haven't been coached by him, so they don't have no idea what it's going to be like. The bigger question I have and what they need to figure out is, are those 33 people going to be willing to take his coaching style? And I'm not saying that they need to change and get rid of Bieniemy because of coaching style. I'm simply saying if you have people on this roster that can't handle his coaching style, maybe they shouldn't be on this roster. Because the reality is that you have to be pushing forward and you can't be soft. That's the key. You absolutely cannot be soft. You have to realize what he is doing. And one of the best, I will just say, I'm not going to say the exact word, but one of the best quotes I've ever heard about a player or about a coach is when Patrick Mahomes basically said, yeah, that guy is a blank. Not going to say the word on YouTube, but you can fill in the blank. And the reality is like, you need that. You absolutely need somebody that is going to be willing to push you and push every single player, not just Patrick Mahomes, but everyone.
And that's why I know a lot of you are doing the math out there. You're like, Ryan, there's only 26 players on offense. That's absolutely true. But EB's impact is going to go beyond the offense because he's going to push the offense to play through the whistle, to hit you until you make them stop hitting you, to do all these things. The defense will reap pluses from the offense raising their game.
And I will challenge you. I would challenge that and say he will still call you out even if you're on defense if he thinks you're slacking. Yeah. So they will get it regardless of whether or not he's their actual coordinator. He will give you an earful if he thinks you're slacking and not doing what you should be doing, at least trying to do what you should be doing.
Yeah. So I don't know where all the players are right now, but if any of y'all are listening, you're at Turks and Caicos or you're down in Cancun, he's coming for you too. No, nobody gets a free pass, even if you play D.
Nope.
So be on your toes. But Eric Bieniemy is not the only thing that's going to be changing on this staff and on this team. There are a lot of opportunities, and I think not just accountability and physical toughness. It's about mental toughness. That is what's going to change on this roster. That's next. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out your forms, find all of my expenses on the pod and everything that goes into producing all of these shows, you can meet with a local tax expert and a person, connect online, and you're in business. For a limited time, all you have to do is to get connected and have your taxes done by a local pro expert for just $150. All in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take your taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Lot of things go into making the most out of an opportunity. If you want to hear more about it, check out KC Chiefs Corner. Read us over at NFL 33. Some of my rankings are going to be coming out in the next few weeks. You don't want to miss that on the draft class, and you can always hear more at RGR Football. I think opportunity is in the eye of the beholder. You have to take advantage of opportunities. If you happen to be a running back coming onto this roster, and I do expect we're going to see several get added to this roster, you have an opportunity to go show Eric Bieniemy what you can do. There's going to be a position coach. There could even be an assistant position coach at the running back spot. Those will be opportunities too. We'll talk about what the coach's opportunities are, but for the players, you have to show heart and a willingness to sacrifice yourself for that play, for that offense, for that team. That is an opportunity for you to gain playing time, gain attention in coaching, gain the ability to be given a chance. And I think we're going to see some like UDFA, maybe journeyman free agent types come on to this roster. That's an opportunity for them.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an opportunity. I'll be curious to see what Bieniemy's role is in shaping Rasheed Smith. He's really the only running back that you'll have in 2026 right now. I mean, you can look at some of the younger guys that may be still on the roster as UDFAs or whatever. I'm not going to count any of them right now because I don't think that any of them are likely to be on the roster, because I agree with you. I think they're going to add probably 2 veterans, I would imagine, or at least 1 veteran in a draft pick, maybe 2 draft picks. It really just depends. There's a lot of questions as to how many draft picks they're going to have, and a lot of things that could play into that. So maybe we'll see some other positions addressed in multiples in this draft that we don't necessarily expect right now. So we'll see how that ends up. But the reality is that Rasheed Smith is really your only running back. What is his role going to be in this offense? What can he do in this offense? And what are they expecting him to do? Because one of the things that they need him to do is be ready to go next season when OTAs start and when training camp starts. And if they're going to have a different role for him, they need to get in touch. They need to be making sure that he is working towards getting his body ready for that different role. I don't know what that's specifically going to be. We will see, but that's one of the opportunities, and I think that's a big one. The biggest question to me right now is still a question of, are there going to be more changes coming that we don't know about right now? I mean, you still have a running back coach. You still have an assistant running back coach that just left. You have an assistant offensive line coach that left. So you have some other offensive assistants, some other positions. Is there going to be anybody else? The fact that they haven't technically hired Bieniemy yet, according to the Chiefs at least, I'm not saying it's not done. We think it's done. It's been announced by several different sources. But they're not going to announce it more than likely until Matt Nagy has a job. Now, my only concern with that is, does that slow you down on any other positional coaches or anybody else that you're looking at, because you haven't just even announced that he is your coach?
Yeah, I think that is a possibility. There's also a possibility that there are other things going on, negotiations, whatever, that might be a domino effect, that once the leash is off, the leash is off. You know what I mean? I think that is a big part of what the rest of this opportunity is. There's not a whole lot of positions open on the defensive side of the coaching staff right now, right? It is very offensive specific, which is something we're probably not used to because of how prolific the offense has been. But how do you take that offense that was once prolific, that has seen itself fade off 3 years running? How do you change that? The opportunity is to change what you do. And maybe part of that is a return to some things that worked earlier, but not just what you do, but how you do it. How do you choose to attack teams? Is it with finesse, or is it with power, particularly in the run game? Is it with misdirection, or is it by getting one-on-one matchups to beat men in that matchup? That's a systemic thing that Andy Reid both controls and allows coaches to have input. And I think the ability to develop players will then influence what that opportunity to change the way that you attack becomes for Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, and I wonder, I kind of look at this, and if you go back and you listen to some of what Patrick Mahomes said when he talked and wanting a new offensive coordinator, knowing it wasn't going to be Nagy, what he wanted from the next guy, it was, I want somebody that's going to come in and challenge me, but I also want somebody that's going to come in and bring new ideas and be bringing new ideas every day. So my question is when you start looking at this, what is Andy looking at? How is Andy looking at? Because quite frankly, in some ways, that's a little bit of a challenge to Reid, because they got away from some of the creativity that Reid has had in his past. And you have to wonder, with all this extra time that he is going to have this offseason that he's never had before while he's been with the Chiefs, other than year one, which he was trying to figure everything else out, is this going to be a year where there's a lot of different changes offensively? Are they going to do more things that are creative? Is he going to look at some of what's being done in college and in different programs and adapt that and bring it to Kansas City? Because the reality is this offense and their schemes, to an extent, some of their concepts are old and teams know what to look for. That's part of the reason why their offense struggled so much this year.
Yeah, and that is a very fair point. Is what can you adapt? Is there enough adaptation? I think when we know what the staff looks like and how they report out through Eric Bieniemy, I think that will also give us some insight as to what can be taken or found, whether it's pro personnel scouting or college scouting, that brings you some of those plays. Joe Blameyer's had a very prolific role in researching and laying out and finding offensive side plays. I would argue a lot of them tend to be on the finesse side of the spectrum. Does that have to change because Eric Bieniemy's in the room? I think we're all pretty confident Eric Bieniemy's not going to change Andy Reid. He had an opportunity to do that. He can change guys that work for him.
Yep. And the other question that I have is, when you start talking about finesse versus power, you don't know. I would state, at least looking at the type of runners that they've had in Kansas City, they really haven't had that good power back. So if you're going to change your scheme, if you're going to change how you're going to be doing things, and you want to do a little bit more power, that needs to be taken into account as to who you sign in free agency and who you draft. So we will get some kind of indication on that. But you and I have had this conversation. Their offensive line has the ability to change and go more to a power type scheme, not saying all the time, but have the ability to run power at different times and attack that way. The question is will they get somebody that can run and do that same type of thing to give them the ability to be multidimensional?
Yeah. I mean, and there's always the ability to add the fullback back to the mix. I'm just telling you.
I should have known you were going to go there.
If you're going to open the door, I'm walking through it. It's not the only thing, though. Nothing is perfect, right? And there are some things that could go wrong. There's a very real fact. Eric Bieniemy could piss off the entire offense. That's next.
NFL season is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, and the cheering alongside the other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. It's frustrating sometimes with all the waiting in lines, the dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives you the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I use it all the time, and my favorite aspect of it is when you go in, you're able to see the view from the seat. It makes a world of difference to know what you're going to be looking at before you do. That way, there are no surprises. There's a ton of deals out there, and you can even get them in the zones that you are looking for most of all. So take the guesswork out of buying your NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, just create the account, redeem that code LOCKEDONNFL, and you're going to get $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live.
FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get into the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users can get into the Profit Boost Pack that's waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded onto your app with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to your bets, like the ones that you like the most and any of them that are out there. Your Profit Boost Pack, open it first thing on game day, and you'll see the boost that you want to apply. Just lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum or defense or the quarterbacks that are left or the coaching, make your picks that much more. Then apply the profit boost that go on them to get even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling and get to their epitome right now. So visit FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack for every NFL playoff game day right now. There's always risk with change, right? And as much as I think the stars are ready to hear from Eric Bieniemy and be coached by Eric Bieniemy and be pushed, there is also a harsher side to Eric Bieniemy. And I think we've heard in the past some rumblings that getting along with him is sometimes difficult. There are guys that have worked with him on this staff for a very long time. Andy Heck is familiar. Andy Heck is still here, along with his assistant. The offensive line and the combination of how you protect and how you run for Patrick Mahomes is going to be, I think, a pivotal discussion. And there are going to be things that come up there. Being able to work with a coach that pushes and demands of you is important as well as another coach. So we have to not gloss over the fact that Eric Bieniemy is going to come in and he's going to be him. Hopefully he's learned a few things since he was here as well. And for the X's and O's, I'm really excited about that. I don't know how much at your age and tenure of Eric Bieniemy that you change the way you do things. So there's a chance as well that he ruffles feathers of not just players, but of coaches.
Absolutely. And quite frankly, in some cases, I'm okay with that. And actually, probably most cases. The reality is that you have to look at this whole system top down. Like when you go back and you look at what Bieniemy did on a regular basis, or at least what the offense was doing when he was here, they were usually top 7 in offense and sometimes much higher than that. Like this was an offense that was consistently very, very good. And it wasn't, and you go back and you look at some of the players, and yeah, you had Travis Kelce in a little bit more of his prime. You had Tyreek Hill at times. Don't get me wrong. I get that. But you also had years where you didn't have those players, and you still had a top offense. So the question to me is, when you get rid of a guy like Bieniemy, did that kind of get rid of the thought process of trying to impose your will on the other team? Because in some ways, that's kind of the way the offense has run over the past several seasons. It's been somewhat infuriating, if I'm being honest, because when you look at it and you're like, okay, they're up 10 points going into the fourth quarter, they're just going to run the ball. They're going to be predictable. You know exactly what they're going to do. Why do you have to play like that? You don't. You need to be attacking, and can that be brought back? Now, when you start talking about what can go wrong, my question about what can go wrong is they've been down this path before. And this, you can make an argument that this is Andy Reid being Andy Reid because he's staying with somebody that's familiar versus going outside the circle that he knows to bring somebody back or to bring somebody in that is going to challenge what he has been doing and give him a whole new perspective. Now, I like the hire. I'm not gonna lie, I was very surprised that this went down and it went this direction as quickly as it did. But I still like the accountability factor of it, and I do like the other side that Bieniemy has been in places where he hasn't had Andy Reid over him. And the reason I like that so much is because you're going to be drawing from other types of offense, other different areas, and he can bring those ideas to the Chiefs. Will they be adapted? That's something we'll see.
Yeah, you're right. I think the other thing that is a concern, and we have to be able to acknowledge it, is if we're talking about what could go wrong, it is also the fact that we've been frustrated with the offensive line play, yet it does seem that Andy Heck is still in place. We've been frustrated with some other aspects. They replaced the wide receivers coach. We don't know the status of Tom Melvin. We might not know the status of Tom Melvin until Travis Kelce announces a decision here, hopefully before the start of the new league year. But there's also the other aspect of what could go wrong in melding the old dogs and the new. You know what I mean? I expect that with the 3 open positions and with an OC in place that is a little more old school and a wide receiver coach that is a little bit more old school, can their philosophies match given how much passing there is in this offense? And B, when you add in those youngsters, can they get on board? Is it enough to lead an offense with the players that execute? Is there enough there, or do you have to find a way for Eric Bieniemy? Does Eric Bieniemy have to find a way to meld maybe a generational gap on a staff as well as a roster?
May have to. And there's a lot of questions that we still don't know. I mean, I would imagine by the time the Super Bowl's over, I would imagine we're going to have a pretty good idea of who the chief staff is going to be. But until then, I can't tell you that we're going to know, because I look at this and I'm like, okay, we had no idea that Bieniemy was going to be the guy, and people say that he was the only one. There are a lot of people out there saying that he was the only one they interviewed. I don't know that I really truly believe that, because one of the things that I've always known about the Chiefs is you're not going to get information out of them. They're going to make sure you don't get information. And why would somebody want to tell everybody that they got interviewed for the Chiefs offensive coordinator position if they're not going to get the job? So to me, it kind of makes sense that there's no reason to really go down that path. So are things going to change now? Now you know he's here. Matt Nagy's still sitting out there. That's why you don't have an announcement. But I guarantee you they're already moving on and trying to figure out, what are we going to do as a staff? How are we going to go about doing this in the future? And what are we going to do for next season? And you're right. There's questions of, you have a little bit of an older staff in a lot of different ways. The other question you have that a lot of teams are starting to get more into analytics. Is this team going to start using that in any way, shape, or form? Or is Andy going to stay true to what he knows? Because one of the ways to adapt and one of the ways to kind of change things is to use more analytics in some of your decision making. It doesn't have to be every single play, but you get all the amount of data that NFL teams get and they have access to is incredible. And one of the things we've talked about when it comes to players, Kansas City has a metric of when they think players will start to slow down and when they will start to fall off. And that's information that we don't get because they have the data of the players actually on the field because everything's tracked. Mm-hmm. How is that going to get used going forward? How do you keep changing things? And how do you meld everything together to try to be successful in a year where we still don't know if Patrick Mahomes is going to be starting week 1?
Well, and that's a very good point because there are people in place for a lot of this. Mike Frazier is the statistical analysis coordinator for Andy Reid and his offense. Now Eric Bieniemy has to work with a stats guy. As I understand from my brief conversations with Mike Frazier, he is very much involved not only in practice week, but on game day in being part of those conversations. Football research analyst Mark Richards is a fairly new hire. I think he's been here 2 seasons. He helps in that process. And head strength conditioning coach, one of my former roles, he's also a sports scientist in Ryan Reynolds, not the Ryan Reynolds, folks, another. He happens to work in Kansas City. I'll bet he's in with the trainers and the team physicians about that longevity. That's something that I'm super interested in. And the question becomes, I know Andy leans that direction to use the analysis. Will Bieniemy, or is it become a yin-yang thing and a push-pull?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just fascinating to me because when you look at when we started this 10 years ago, we started doing a podcast 10 years ago at this point. When we were doing this podcast 10 years ago, analytics was in its infancy, but wasn't talked about on a regular basis. Yeah, you talked about, whether or not people should go for it on 4th down. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about starting and looking at EPA. I'm starting and looking at what is the expected outcome if you do this versus if you do this. That's where this game is going, and it's completely changing how some of these teams are attacking things. And if you're not willing to do that to an extent, you will get left behind. So to me, Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid are old school guys, but I think you're right. I mean, you look at some of the guys that Reid has brought in, they're starting to get more of that information, and I wonder if that's why Reid started going for it more on 4th down in short yardage situations, because the stats prove that you should be going for it on 4th down, which makes sense. It's not just a gut thing. It's okay. Generally speaking, yes, you should be going for it in those scenarios. So how do they marry all that? How does everything be put together? That's going to be the great question. And that's going to be something that we get to talk about for the next couple of weeks, because we're going to be finding out more information every single day.
Yep. And as we go on, we will drop it all for you. We appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure you like, sub, and hit that bell. We have more coming for you next week. As we get some coaching announcements, things like that, I'm going to take a short vacation. Chris has it on lock, and we're going to give you everything that you need when announcements are made. I expect that this will start to loosen up after this weekend. So make sure that you're with us and you're subscribed. If you want audio, ad-free audio, that is, or you want in the Discord, make sure that you get into the Everydayers Club. There is a link in the description. Make sure that you check that out over at Supercast. We very much appreciate that. Thank you for your time and listening today, and we'll talk to you next time.